The research ship floated in space like a broken toy. Its name was Zephyr's Dream, and it was dying. Smoke came from holes in its metal walls. The lights inside flickered on and off. Air was leaking out into the cold darkness of space. Commander Kethver pressed his scaly hand against the control panel. The screen showed bad news. The ship's power was almost gone. The engines were dead. Life support was failing. He looked around at his crew. They were scared. Some were hurt. All of them knew they might die today. The ship held beings from 3 different worlds. There was Kethver himself, with blue-green scales and large yellow eyes. His people were called Altarians. They loved to learn about old things and distant places. There was Science Officer Kelthu, whose skin was pale blue and whose blood was darker blue. His people were the Centauri. They were good at fixing machines and understanding how things worked. There were others, too, all different, all far from home. But there was also one human. Her name was Dr. Luna Voss. She was small compared to the others, with brown hair and green eyes. She studied old buildings and dead cities on faraway planets. Right now, she was trying to help the hurt crew members. She moved from one to another, checking their wounds and giving them medicine. The attack had come from nowhere. They had been studying the Kepler Nebula, a huge cloud of gas and dust in space. Inside the nebula, they had found something amazing. On a planet called Kepler 7, there were ruins, buildings that were millions of years old. They had been built by people who lived long before any of the current space-traveling races existed. The crew had been excited. They had taken pictures and collected samples. Dr. Voss had been especially happy. She had found writing on the walls of the old buildings. It might tell them about the people who built them. The whole crew had been looking forward to going home and sharing what they had learned. But then the Vreks had found them. The Vreks were hunters. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and sharp teeth. They had long arms and claws that could cut through metal. They flew in fast, dark ships that looked like flying knives. They liked to hurt others and take their things. Most people in the galaxy were afraid of them. 3 Vreks warships had appeared suddenly. They had weapons that shot bright beams of energy. They had missiles that could blow holes in ship hulls. The research ship had no weapons. It was built for learning, not fighting. The Vreks ships had attacked without warning. The first blast had hit the engine room. 2 crew members had died right away. The second blast had damaged the life support systems. The third blast had destroyed the communication array. But the emergency beacon was still working. It was sending out a signal asking for help. Commander Kethver had tried to surrender. He had sent a message to the Vreks ships. He had told them they were scientists, not soldiers. He had offered to give them the research data if they would let the crew live. But the Vreks had laughed. They had said they would take the data anyway, after everyone was dead. The Vreks had shot at the ship again and again. Then they had stopped. They had sent a message saying they would come back later to finish the job. They wanted the crew to suffer while they waited to die. This was how the Vreks did things. They liked to cause pain and fear. Now the crew was trapped in the emergency shelter. It was a small room in the center of the ship. It had thick walls and its own air supply, but the air would not last long. The power was running out. The heat was fading. Soon it would be very cold. Dr. Voss knelt beside Kelthu. The blue-skinned officer had been hurt in the first attack. His arm was broken. There was a deep cut on his side. She had stopped the bleeding, but he was still in pain. How much time do we have? Kelthu asked. His voice was weak. Dr. Voss looked at her small computer. It showed the air levels in the shelter. Maybe 2 hours, she said. Maybe less. Some of the crew members were crying. Others were praying to their gods. A few were talking quietly about their families back home. Everyone knew they were going to die. The nearest space station was days away. No one knew they were here except the Vrex commander Kethver sat down heavily. He was old for his kind. He had been in space for many years. He had seen many things, but he had never felt so helpless. He was supposed to protect his crew. Instead, he had led them into danger. "I'm sorry," he said to the others. "This is my fault. I should have been more careful." Dr. Voss looked up from her work. "No," she said firmly. "You didn't know the Vrex. We're here. None of us did. We came here to learn something new. That's not wrong." Outside the shelter, the ship continued to die. Metal groaned as it cooled. Lights went out one by one. The Vrex were out there somewhere, waiting. They would come back soon to make sure no one survived. But the emergency beacon kept sending its signal into the dark. It was a tiny voice in the huge emptiness of space. It was calling for help. It was calling for someone, anyone, to hear it and come. The crew of the Zephyr's Dream didn't know if anyone would answer. They could only wait and hope. They held on to each other and tried to be brave. They thought about their homes and their families. They thought about the amazing things they had discovered. And somewhere in the darkness, the beacon's call traveled through space, looking for someone who would care enough to help. The USS Defiant moved through space like a hunting wolf. It was big and powerful, with thick armor and many weapons. Inside, hundreds of humans worked together like parts of a machine. They all had jobs to do, and they did them well. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge. He was a tall man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had been fighting in space for 20 years. He had seen many battles and lost many friends. But he had never lost his ship or failed his crew. The bridge was the ship's control center. It had big screens showing space around them. It had computers that could think faster than any human. It had weapons controls that could destroy enemy ships in seconds. But the most important thing on the bridge was the people who worked there. Lieutenant Amy Scott sat at the communication station. She was young, with red hair and bright blue eyes. She was very good at her job. She could hear signals from far away and understand messages in many different languages. Today, she had heard something that made her angry. "Captain," she said, "I'm getting a distress signal from the Kepler Nebula. It's from a research ship. They're under attack." "Captain." Morrison walked over to her station. "Tell me more." Amy typed on her computer. Information appeared on the screen. "The ship is called Zephyr's Dream. It has a mixed crew from several species. One of them is human. The attackers are Vrex." Morrison's face got hard. He knew about the Vrex. They were bullies who attacked weak ships and killed innocent people. They thought they were strong because they had weapons and weren't afraid to use them. But they had never fought humans before. "How long ago did this happen?" Morrison asked. "The attack was 6 hours ago," Amy said. "The ship is badly damaged. Life support is failing. The crew doesn't have much time." Morrison looked at the star map on the main screen. The Kepler Nebula was far away. Even at their fastest speed, it would take time to get there. Time the research ship might not have. "Set course for the Kepler Nebula," Morrison ordered. "Maximum speed." Navigator Chris. Baker was a thin man with quick hands and a sharp mind. He knew every star and planet in this part of space. He typed commands into his computer. The ship's course changed. "Course set, Captain," he said. "We'll reach the nebula in 4 hours." Morrison nodded, but he wasn't sure that would be fast. Enough. The research ship was dying. The Vrex might come back to finish what they started. 4 hours might be too long. "Engineering," Morrison said into his communication device. "This is the captain. I need more speed." The voice that answered belonged to Pete Rodriguez. He was the ship's chief engineer. He knew every pipe and wire in the ship. He could make the engines work better than anyone else. "Captain, we're already at maximum safe speed," Pete said. "If we go faster, we might damage the engines." "How much faster can we go?" Morrison asked. There was a pause. Pete was thinking, "I can give you 20% more speed for 2 hours. But after that, we'll need to slow down for repairs." "Do it," Morrison said. Throughout the ship, people heard the announcement. The Defiant was going to battle. Everyone knew what that meant. They had trained for this many times. They knew their jobs, and they were ready to do them. Weapons Officer Kate Palmer checked all the ship's guns and missiles. Kate was a small woman with black hair and steady hands. She could hit targets that other people couldn't even see. She made sure every weapon was loaded and ready to fire. The ship's Marines put on their armor and checked their rifles. They were soldiers who fought on foot when the ship reached enemy stations or planets. Their leader was Sergeant Danny Clark, a big man with muscles like steel cables. He had fought in many battles and never lost one dot in the medical bay. Doctors prepared for wounded people. They didn't know if they would be treating their own crew or rescuing survivors from the research ship. Either way, they would be ready. Dr. Helen White was the ship's chief medical officer. She was older than most of the crew, with silver hair and gentle hands. She had saved many lives over the years. She hoped she could save more today. The ship's computer showed them pictures of the Vrex warships. There were 3 of them. They were fast and had good weapons. But they were smaller than the Defiant, and they had never fought humans before. "What do we know about Vrex fighting tactics?" Morrison asked. Lieutenant Scott had been studying the Osti. "Enemy ships. They like to attack in groups," she said. "They use their speed to hit and run. They don't like long battles." "Good," Morrison said. "We'll give them a long battle." The Defiant flew through space, faster than it had ever gone before. In the engine room, Pete Rodriguez watched the temperature gauges. The engines were running hot, but they were holding together. The crew was ready. They had cleaned their weapons and checked their equipment. They had said prayers and written letters to their families. They had done everything they could to prepare, but Morrison knew that preparation wasn't enough. The Vrex had attacked innocent people. They had left them to die in the cold darkness of space. That was something humans couldn't accept. In human space, there were rules. You didn't attack civilians. You didn't kill people who couldn't fight back. You didn't leave anyone to die alone. These weren't just laws. They were beliefs that every human carried in their heart. The Vrex had broken these rules. They had hurt people who were just trying to learn about the universe. They had made themselves enemies of humanity, and humans never forgot their enemies. "How long until we reach the nebula?" Morrison asked. 3 hours and 40 minutes, Chris Baker said. Morrison nodded. He hoped the research ship could hold on that long. He hoped Dr. Luna Voss and her crewmates were still alive. He hoped the Vrex would still be there when the Defiant arrived, because Captain Jake Morrison and his crew were going to teach the Vrex something about human nature. They were going to learn that humans protected their own. They were going to learn that attacking innocent people had consequences. The Defiant flew on through the stars, carrying the fury of humanity toward the darkness of the Kepler Nebula. Behind them, more human ships were getting ready to follow. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you made humans angry. And in the cold vacuum of space, the research ship's beacon kept calling for help. Soon, that help would arrive. Soon, the Vrex would learn what it meant to face human justice. The emergency shelter was getting colder. Commander Kethver watched the last power cells slowly die. The numbers on the screen were dropping. Soon there would be no power left at all. Then the air would stop moving. The heat would fade away, They would all freeze to death in the darkness. Most of the crew had stopped talking. They sat together in small groups, holding each other for warmth. Some were sleeping. Others stared at the walls with empty eyes. Everyone knew they were going to die. Dr. Luna Voss kept working. She checked on the wounded crew members every few minutes. She gave them water and medicine. She talked to them quietly, trying to keep their spirits up. But she knew it was almost over. Science Officer Kelthu was getting worse. His blue skin was turning gray. His breathing was shallow. The cuts on his body had stopped bleeding, but only because he was losing too much blood. He looked up at Luna with tired eyes. "Will anyone remember us?" he asked. His voice was barely a whisper. Luna took his hand. "Yes," she said. "Someone will find our research. They'll know what we discovered. They'll remember that we tried to learn something new." But even as she said it, Luna wasn't sure if it was true. The Vrex might destroy everything. They might take the research data and keep it for themselves. The crew of the Zephyr's Dream might disappear forever. Like they had never existed, the ship's computer made a soft beeping sound. It was the same sound it had been making for hours. The emergency beacon was still working. It was still sending its signal into space, calling for help. But no one had answered. Commander Kethfer closed his eyes. He thought about his homeworld. He thought about his family. He thought about all the things he would never see again. He had lived a good life. He had seen many wonders in the galaxy. But he had always thought he would die at home, surrounded by loved ones. Suddenly, the ship's sensors detected something. A bright flash of light appeared at the edge of the nebula. Something big was coming out of hyperspace. Something very big. Luna looked at the sensor screen. Her heart started beating faster. "Commander," she said, "there's a ship coming." Kethvar opened his eyes and looked at the screen. The ship was huge. It was bigger than anything he had ever seen. It had thick armor and many weapons. It looked like it was built for war. "Is it the Vrex?" someone asked. "No," Luna said. She was reading the ship's identification signal. "It's human. It's a human warship." The crew looked at each other with surprise. They had heard stories about human ships, but most of them had never seen one. Humans were a young species. They had only been traveling in space for a few hundred years. But they had built ships that were stronger and faster than anything else in the galaxy. The human ship moved through the nebula like it owned the place. The gas and dust that made it hard for other ships to see didn't seem to bother it at all. It came straight toward the Zephyr's Dream. A voice came over the communication system. It was strong and clear. It had the accent that humans used when they spoke the common galactic language. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Defiant. We received your distress signal. We're here to help." Commander Kethver tried to answer, but his voice was too weak. The ship's communication system was barely working. Dr. Luna Voss moved to the control panel. "Captain Morrison," she said. "This is Dr. Luna Voss. We have wounded crew members. Our life support is failing. We don't have much time." "We understand, Doctor," Morrison said. "We're going to get you out of there. Prepare for transport." Luna didn't understand what he meant. The nebula made it impossible to use normal transport beams. The gas and dust interfered with the signals. Every species in the galaxy knew this. That's why they had been trapped. But the humans had different technology. The Defiant's transport beams were more powerful than anything the aliens had seen. They could cut through the nebula like it wasn't there. Blue light filled the emergency shelter. The crew felt a strange tingling sensation. The room around them seemed to fade away. Then they were somewhere else entirely. They were in a large, bright room. The walls were clean and white. The air was warm and fresh. There were beds and medical equipment everywhere. Human doctors and nurses were waiting for them. Luna looked around in amazement. One moment they had been dying in a cold, dark shelter. The next moment they were in what looked like the best medical facility in the galaxy. "Welcome aboard the Defiant," said a woman in a medical uniform. She was older than Luna, with silver hair and kind eyes. "I'm Dr. Helen White. We're going to take good care of you." The human medical team went to work immediately. They moved the wounded crew members to beds. They connected them to machines that monitored their vital signs. They gave them medicine and fluids. They worked quickly and efficiently. Like they had done this many times before. Luna watched in amazement as they treated Science Officer Kelthu. The humans had medical scanners that could see inside his body. They had medicine that worked on alien biology. They had equipment that could repair damaged organs. "How do you know how to treat us?" Luna asked Dr. White. "We study," the doctor said simply. "We learn about every species we meet. We prepare for situations like this." Commander Kethfer was lying on a bed nearby. He looked much better already. The human doctors had given him something for the pain. They had treated his injuries. They had even given him a warm blanket. "Captain Morrison," Kethfer said when the human officer came to check on them. "Thank you for saving us. We thought we were going to die." Morrison's face was serious. "No one dies on my watch," he said. "But we're not done yet. The Vrex ships are still out there. They need to learn that attacking civilians has consequences." Luna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. She had seen the anger in Morrison's eyes. She had heard the steel in his voice. The Vrex had made a mistake when they attacked the research ship. They had attacked a crew that included a human. And humans, she was learning, protected their own. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Morrison looked at her with eyes that were hard as stone. "We're going to teach them about human justice," he said. On the bridge of the Defiant, the crew was preparing for battle. They had found the 3 Vrex warships hiding in the nebula. The enemy ships were waiting to see if any survivors would try to escape from the research vessel. "They're just sitting there," said Lieutenant Amy Scott. "They think they're safe in the nebula." "They're wrong," Morrison said. He turned to his weapons officer. "Kate, are you ready?" Kate Palmer smiled. Her hands were steady on the weapon controls. "Always ready, Captain." The Defiant moved through the nebula toward the Vrex ships. The human warship was like a ghost in the cosmic dust. The Vrex couldn't see it coming until it was too late. In the medical bay, Luna and the other survivors watched on the screens. They were about to see what happened when humans went to war. They were about to learn why the galaxy was starting to fear and respect the young species from Earth. The Vrex had thought they were hunters. They had thought they were strong, but they had never met humans before. They had never faced a species that would travel across the galaxy to protect a single member of their kind. The battle was about to begin, and the Vrex were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. Captain Vextar of the Vrex warship Bloodclaw was getting impatient. His ship and 2 others had been waiting in the nebula for hours. They were watching the wreckage of the research vessel, making sure no one escaped. Vextar was tall and thin. Like all Vrex, his skin was gray and rough. His arms were long and ended in sharp claws. His teeth were pointed and white. He had been hunting other species for many years. He enjoyed causing fear and pain. "Why do we wait?" asked his second-in-command, Kexvar. "The prey is already dead." Vextar showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "Sometimes survivors hide in the wreckage. Sometimes rescue ships come looking for them. We wait to kill anyone who tries to help." The 3 Vrex ships were hidden in the thick gas and dust of the nebula. They thought they were invisible. They thought they were safe. They had sensors that could detect other ships, but the nebula made it hard to see far. Suddenly, the ships. Alarms started screaming. The sensor officer, a young Vrex named Texon, looked at his screen with wide eyes. "Captain," he said, "I'm detecting a large ship approaching. It's coming fast." Vexstar moved to the sensor station. He looked at the screen. The ship was big, much bigger than the research vessel. It had thick armor and many weapons. It looked dangerous. What species? Vexstar asked. Texon worked at his controls. The computer says it's human, Captain. Vexstar laughed. He had heard of humans. They were a young species. They had only been in space for a few hundred years. They were supposed to be weak and soft. They avoided fights and tried to make peace with everyone. One human ship against 3 Vrex warships, Vexstar said. They must be very stupid or very brave. What are your orders, Captain? Kexvar asked. Vexstar thought for a moment. Human. Ships were supposed to have good technology. Their weapons might be dangerous, but 3 against 1 were good odds. And the Vrex had been fighting in space for thousands of years. Tell the other ships to prepare for battle, Vexstar said. We'll destroy the humans quickly, and we'll take their ship and see what we can learn from it. The 3 Vrex warships moved into attack formation. The Bloodclaw was in the center. The Razorfang and Void Stalker spread out on either side. They had done this many times before. They knew how to work together. The human ship was called the USS Defiant. It moved through the nebula like it could see perfectly. The gas and dust that hid the Vrex ships didn't seem to bother it at all. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Morrison watched the enemy ships on his screen. His crew was ready for battle. They had saved the research vessel's crew. Now it was time to make sure the Vrex learned a lesson. 3 ships, said Lieutenant Amy Scott. They're spreading out to surround us. Morrison nodded. Standard Vrex. Tactics. They like to attack from all sides at once. Weapons Officer Kate Palmer checked her controls. All the ship's weapons were ready. They're moving into position, Captain. Should I wait for them to fire first? No, Morrison said. His voice was cold as ice. They attacked civilians. They left people to die. They don't deserve mercy. The Vrex ships opened fire first. Bright beams of energy shot through the nebula. Missiles followed, leaving trails of light in the cosmic dust. The attack was coordinated and fierce. Any normal ship would have been destroyed in seconds. But the Defiant wasn't a normal ship. It was a human warship, built for the worst kinds of battles. Its shields absorbed the energy beams. Its defensive systems shot down the missiles. It moved like a living thing, twisting and turning to avoid the attacks. Navigator Chris Baker worked at his controls with quick, steady hands. He knew exactly how to move the ship to avoid the enemy fire. He had trained for this kind of battle many times. Their shots are missing, he reported. We're too fast for them. Captain Morrison smiled grimly. Show them what human weapons can. Do, Kate. The Defiant's weapon systems came alive. Quantum torpedoes shot out like blue stars. Plasma beams cut through the nebula like swords of light. The human ship's firepower was incredible, but Morrison wasn't trying to destroy the Vrex ships. He was trying to disable them. He wanted prisoners. He wanted answers. He wanted the Vrex to understand what they had done wrong. The first torpedo hit the Razorfang's engine room. The Vrex ship shuddered and began to slow down. Its engines were damaged. It could no longer maneuver quickly. The second torpedo hit the Void Stalker's weapon systems. Explosions rippled along its hull. Half of its guns stopped working. It was still dangerous, but much less so. The third torpedo was aimed at the Bloodclaw. But Captain Vexstar had learned to fear the human weapons. He ordered his ship to dive deeper into the nebula, where the gas was thicker. They're running, Kate said. Should I pursue? No, Morrison said. Let them think they're safe. Then we'll surprise them. The Defiant seemed to disappear into the nebula. The Vrex ships lost sight of it on their sensors. Vexstar began to think. They might escape after all, But humans had better technology than the Vrex realized. The Defiant's sensors could see through the nebula. Its computers could track the enemy ships even when they were hiding. The human ship appeared suddenly behind the Void Stalker. It was so close that the Vrex couldn't miss it. But they also couldn't turn their weapons fast enough to hit it. More torpedoes hit the Vrex ship. This time they targeted the life support systems. The Vrex crew found themselves breathing thin air. Their ship was dying around them. "Surrender," Morrison's voice came over the communication system. "Your ships are disabled. Your crews are in danger. Give up now, and no one else has to die." But Vextar wasn't ready to surrender. He had never been defeated before. He ordered his ship to ram the Defiant. If he was going to die, he would take the humans with him. The Blood Claw accelerated toward the human ship. Its hull was cracked and bleeding air. Its weapons were mostly gone, but it was still big enough to damage the Defiant if it hit. Morrison saw the attack coming. "Emergency maneuvers," he ordered. The Defiant spun away from the ramming attack. The Blood Claw missed by only a few meters. But the human ship wasn't finished. As the Vrex ship passed by, the Defiant's weapons fired one more time. The shots were precise and careful. They hit the Blood Claw's bridge. The command center was destroyed. Captain Vextar and his officers were killed instantly. The ship tumbled helplessly through space. Thought the battle was over. All 3 Vrex ships were disabled. Their crews were alive but defeated. They had learned something important about humans. They had learned that humans were not weak. They had learned that humans protected their own dot in the medical bay of the Defiant. The rescued crew watched the battle on the screens. They were amazed by what they had seen. The human ship had fought 3 enemies at once, and one easily. Dr. Luna Voss looked at Commander Kethver. "I've never seen anything like that," she said. Kethver nodded. "Neither have I. The humans fight differently than anyone else. They're not just trying to win. They're trying to teach a lesson." On the bridge, Captain Morrison was talking to the surviving Vrex crews. His voice was calm but firm. "You attacked a civilian research vessel," he said. "You tried to kill innocent people. In human space, that's a crime. You're going to answer for what you did." The Vrex had learned about human justice. They had learned that humans didn't forget. They had learned that attacking civilians had consequences. And they had learned that the galaxy was changing. The age of the Vrex was ending. The age of humanity was beginning. The interrogation room on the USS Defiant was simple and clean. There was a metal table and 2 chairs. The walls were gray. The lights were bright. There were no decorations or comfortable things. It was a place for serious business. Captain Morrison sat on one side of the table. Across from him sat the highest-ranking Vrex officer who had survived the battle. His name was Sub-Commander Kexvar. He had been second in command on the Blood Claw before his captain was killed. Kexvar was wounded, but alive. Human doctors had treated his injuries. They had given him food and water. They had even given him pain medicine. He didn't understand why they were being kind to him. "You should have killed me," Kexvar said. His voice was rough and angry. "That's what we would have done." Morrison looked at him with steady eyes. "That's the difference between us," he said. "We don't kill prisoners. We don't attack civilians. We don't leave people to die in space." Kexvar showed his sharp teeth. "You don't understand how the galaxy works, human. The strong take from the weak. The Vrex have always been strong. We take what we want." Morrison leaned back in his chair. He pressed a button on a small device. The room filled with a holographic display. It showed space around. The Kepler Nebula. But now there were many more ships. Dozens of them, all human. "The 7th Fleet," Morrison said. "They're taking positions along the border with Vrex space." Your people just declared war on humanity. They attacked a ship with a human crew member. That makes it our business." Kexvar looked at the display with growing fear. He had never seen so many warships in one place. Each one was as big and powerful as the Defiant. Together, they could destroy entire planets. "You're bluffing," Kexvar said, but his voice was less sure than before. Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Humans don't bluff about protecting our people. We've been preparing for this day since we first learned about the Vrex. We know how you think. We know how you fight. And we know how to beat you." The holographic display changed. Now it showed Vrex space. Red dots marked Vrex military bases and shipyards. Green dots showed human ships moving toward them. There were hundreds of green dots. "Your leaders have a choice," Morrison said. "They can surrender the officers who ordered the attack on the research ship. They can pay compensation to the families of the dead. They can promise to stop attacking civilian ships, or they can fight a war they can't win." Kexvar stared at the display. He had grown up believing the Vrex were the strongest species in the galaxy. They had conquered many worlds. They had defeated many enemies. But he had never seen anything like this. "How many ships do you have?" he asked quietly. "Enough," Morrison said. "The question is, how many Vrex are willing to die for the right to attack innocent people?" In another part of the ship, Dr. Luna. Voss was talking with Commander Kethver. They were in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars. The Altarian commander was feeling much better after the human medical treatment. "I still can't believe what happened," Kethver said. "One human ship defeated 3 Vrex warships. And they did it to save us." Luna nodded. "That's what humans do. We protect people who can't protect themselves. It doesn't matter what species they are." "But why?" Kethver asked. "We're not human. We're not even from the same part of the galaxy. Why would you risk your lives for us?" Luna thought about the question. "Because it's the right thing to do," she said finally. "Because everyone deserves to live. Because knowledge and learning are more important than war and conquest." She looked out at the stars. "My people have only been in space for a few hundred years. We've made mistakes. We've fought wars. But we've also learned that the galaxy is big enough for everyone. There's room for all of us if we work together." Kethver was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. "My people will want to know about this. The Altarian Science Council will want to hear about human honor and courage. We will remember what you did for us." "Good," Luna said, "because we're going to need friends in the galaxy. The Vrex won't be the only ones who test us. There will be others who think humans are weak because we're young." In the medical bay, the other survivors were recovering quickly. The human doctors had worked miracles. Science Officer Kelthu was sitting up in his bed. His blue skin had returned to its normal color. His wounds were healing. Dr. Helen White checked his vital signs. "You'll be fine," she told him. "Your people are tougher than they look." "Not as tough as humans, apparently," Kelthu said. "I saw the battle on the screens. Your ship moved like it was alive. Your weapons hit exactly where you wanted them to." Dr. White smiled. "We train hard, and we have good equipment. But the most important thing is that we never give up. We never leave anyone behind." The news of the battle was spreading through the galaxy. Other species were hearing about what happened in the Kepler Nebula. They were learning about human military power. They were learning about human values. On the bridge of the Defiant, Captain Morrison received a message from Earth Command. Admiral Patricia Stone appeared on the communication screen. She was an older woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. "Well done, Captain," she said. "The Vrex leadership wants to talk." "They're asking for a meeting." Morrison nodded. They saw the fleet positions, They know they can't win a war against us. What do you recommend? The Admiral asked. Morrison thought for a moment. We give them one chance. They turn over the officers who ordered the attack. They pay compensation. They promise to stop attacking civilians. If they refuse, we show them what human justice really looks like. The meeting took place 3 days later. It was held on a neutral space station at the edge of Vrex territory. The Vrex sent their highest military commander, General Zexthul. The humans sent Admiral Stone and Captain Morrison. General Zexthul was old even by Vrex standards. His gray skin was covered with scars from many battles. His claws were worn down from years of fighting. He had never been defeated before. You make demands of the Vrex Dominion, he said. His voice was like grinding metal. No one makes demands of us. Admiral Stone looked at him calmly. Times change, General. Your people attacked a civilian research vessel. They tried to murder innocent scientists. That's not war. That's terrorism. The weak deserve to die, Zexthul said. That is the way of the galaxy. Not anymore, Morrison said. Humanity is here now. We protect the weak. We defend the innocent. We make sure justice is done. Zexthul laughed. It was an ugly sound. You are children playing with toys. The Vrex have ruled this part of space for thousands of years. We will not bow to infants who learned to fly between the stars yesterday. Admiral Stone pressed a button on her communicator. The room filled with a holographic display showing the current positions of human and Vrex fleets. The humans had more ships. Much more. Your choice, General, she said. Peace or war. But if you choose war, it will be the last choice the Vrex Dominion ever makes. For the first time in his long life, General Zexthul felt fear. He looked at the display and saw the future of his people. They could surrender now and live with shame, or they could fight and die with honor. He made his choice. The officers responsible for the attack will be turned over to human justice, he said slowly. Compensation will be paid. But the Vrex will not promise to change our ways. We are what we are. Morrison stood up. Then we'll teach you to be something better. Every time you attack innocent people, we'll be there. Every time you prey on the weak, we'll stop you. You can learn to live with honor, or you can learn to live in fear. The meeting ended. The Vrex kept their word about the officers and compensation, but they didn't change their ways entirely. Over the years that followed, there were more incidents, more attacks on civilian ships, more acts of cruelty and violence. And every time, human ships appeared. Every time, justice was done. Slowly, the Vrex learned. Slowly, the galaxy changed. Dr. Luna Voss returned to her work studying ancient civilizations. But now she traveled with human escorts. The galaxy was safer for scientists and explorers. Knowledge could be pursued without fear. Commander Kethvar became an ambassador between his people and humanity. The Altarians joined the growing alliance of species that looked to humans for protection and leadership. The research ship Zephyr's Dream was rebuilt and returned to service. Its crew continued their work, knowing that somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships were watching over them. Captain Morrison continued to patrol the borders of human space. He and his crew were ready to answer any distress call, to protect any innocent people who needed help. The galaxy had learned something important. The humans had arrived. They brought with them new ideas about justice and protection. They brought hope for the weak and fear for the cruel. The age of predators was ending. The age of guardians had begun. And at the center of it all were the humans, young and determined, ready to fight for what was right. In the vast darkness between the stars, no one would be left to die alone. Humanity would make sure of that. Because that's what it meant to be human. Nobody gets left behind.